Hi guys, welcome back. So in this session we will learn about what are the Salesforce interview question and answers most important questions asked in Salesforce. So first question is, what is the order of execution in Salesforce? So the order of execution in Salesforce is, first is fetch the data and it goes for validation. After the validation is two parts, that is system validation and user defined validation. And that third is before triggers, and that fourth is for validation rule, that is comes under custom plus standard. After that it goes for checks the duplicate rule, then save your record but does not commit error, then it goes for after trigger, then it goes for assignment rule, auto response rule, workflow rule, then workflow has subparts like workflow field update, before update, after update, and system validations. And it goes for process and flow, then escalation rule, entitlement rule, cost object formula, progress summary, criteria based summary, commit all DML operations on database, and post logic email. So, second question is, what is the difference between insert and database dot insert? So, insert, it means when, suppose let's take an example that we have to process, we have to insert 1000 records. Okay, then if suppose if one records fail, then all the record will be failed. And in case of database dot insert, suppose if one record fails, then nine thou- nine uh, 999 records will be inserted successfully and one records will be failed. But in database dot result it will be partially insert, and in the insert it will not be partially insert. Okay. What is flow type? So Salesforce provides three type of flows. First is screen flow, auto launched flow, and triggered flow. The screen flow is guide users through business process and captures your user input. Auto launch flow do not have any trigger and they run in the background. And then auto launch flow no trigger. It launches when invoked by your Apex process, REST API and more. And record trigger flow, it launched when by a trigger when you specify and they run in the background. Okay. And launch yeah, record trigger flow launch when a record is created, updated or deleted, and the schedule trigger flow launch at a specified time and frequency for each record in a batch. Platform event trigger flow launches when a platform message is received. Fourth question is, what is validation rule? So a validation rule are automated checks your criteria and defined to ensure that the data entered into Salesforce meet your organization specific requirements. Okay, they act as a data quality that gatekeepers, preventing your incorrect and incomplete data from being saved. Let's suppose you entered wrong data. Let's suppose let's take an example that in the number field you enter a text field. That in the data validation it checks the please enter a number, not a text. That it it validates your data that it will be entered by correct or no wrong. If it is correct, then it will save your data. If it be wrong, then validation would pop up comes here, and that error pop up message, please give your correct input. Okay. Types of validation rules. There are two types of validation rule. First is system validation rule and second is custom validation rule. The system validation rule enforce standard data consistency and are automatically applied to all records. Matlab it doesn't handle by your user. It handled by Salesforce, that it is predefined. Okay. And the custom validation rule defined by your own logic, what you defined your logic in Salesforce, then it comes under a custom validation rule. Okay. Example requiring a minimum of 10 character in the description field of a custom object. So fifth question is, validation rule, how to implement with custom settings. So in Salesforce, validation rule are typically used for enforce data quality, by defining criteria that record must meet before they are saved, like custom setting on the header end or custom object that allow you to create and store custom data at the organization, profile or user level. Okay, if you want to implement a validation rule that consider under custom settings, and you may need to use a combination of formulas and custom setting, then reference your validation rule. Okay, yeah, create a custom settings. That how here are the process how to create a custom settings in validation rule. Okay, so then navigate to setup in Salesforce. In the quick formula search, enter the custom settings and click on new custom settings over there, and yeah, define your custom setting based on your requirement. Let's suppose you create a hierarchical custom settings, then name the my custom setting itna with a field of validation name. Okay, when suppose you create a my custom setting is a name, and in that my custom setting create a field name as validation flag. Then after that set custom values. After creating the custom value, then you set a values for the custom setting at the appropriate level, organizational profile level or user level. Then after that create a validation rule for navigative setup. In the quick find was enter validation rule and select it. Okay, click on this new rule, provide a name and description for your validation rule. Define validation criteria. Use a formula to define the validation criteria. Include a reference to the custom settings in your formula. For example, if you want to validate based on the validation flag in the field, in the custom setting, your formula might look like this: that not $setting dot my custom settings dot validation flag. This formula checks if the validation flag is in the custom setting is set to false. Okay, and define an error message. Specify error message. Activate the validation. It specifies that it will be true or false. It will be false. Then it doesn't show a message. It will be true. It shows a message that define error message. Okay, this message help understand why their records cannot be saved. And after that, activate the validation rules. When you have configured all your validation, then make sure to activate it. Now, when a user tries to save a record that doesn't meet the criteria defined the validation rule, if its associated custom setting is set to trigger the validation and errors will be displayed. Types of events in LWC. So there are three types of events in LWC, that is parent to child event communication in Lightning Web Components, custom event communication from child to parent, publish subscriber model in Lightning Web Component or LMS. LMS like two components which doesn't have a direct relation, that which they are not in hierarchy. So if we want to communicate in the Lightning Web Component with Visual Force page, then we can use your LMS. Here the picture comes up that LWC parent to child relationship in between and child to parent relationship. That LWC divided into two parts, that is parent to child relationship and child to parent. So parent to child event communication in LWC, that in Aura framework we can call a method to of child component from the parent component to that with the help of your Aura method. In Aura LWC, that Aura method becomes a JavaScript code, that is parent component from the parent component is goes for the child component. Okay, so Lightning Web Component, we can pass the details from parent to child using two way. How can we pass the data from the parent component to the child component using two methods? These are called public method or public properties. Or we have to use at the rate API decorator to make the child properties method publicly available so for parent. Okay, so we can use the API at the rate API decorator to make the method publicly available so that the parent are able to call it directly using JavaScript. If the method that at the rate API decorator is not publicly, so the method basically the method of the estimate template couldn't be called in the JavaScript. Okay, parent component could not be called the child component. So for example, create one public method and which we need to access in the parent component. So in child component, we with at the rate API decorator we use, so the parent component get called by child component. Okay, let's take one example to pass the value from parent component to child component. Here, step 1, create one child component to show message from parent component. Like child component.html, message will become here from parent component, that is message and template. Child component.js, create a JavaScript method in child component and assign value to its child attribute, that import lighting component track API from LWC. Export default class child component, extend lighting element at the rate track message and at the rate API. This method is enabled as at the rate API, then change message str string, then this dot message to uppercase. This message to pass to the parent component. Okay, that is create one parent component to call the child component, that is parent component.html. That way template lightning call data parent to child demo, that is lighting layout. After that it's fixing the layout, lighting input level, that enter the message on change, handle change event, that is lighting input. In the lightning layout item, it will input level. After that it will call the child component, see child component. After that the template will be image, and in the parent component.js import lighting from LWC. Export default class parent component, extend child element, lighting element. Then in the handle change event, call the child component dot this dot template dot query locator see child component on dot change message event dot target value. So this parent component dot js call the child component which were used in your this part. Yeah, this part. Okay, see child component change message. So note the query selector method is a standard DOM API that returns the first element that matches the selector. Then after at the last step, update your meta.js file to make this component available for home page, record page, and app page. The API version is export is equal to true. Thereafter the set a target, which target page have to like an app page, record page, home page. Second is public properties. You can make a component property by publicly by prefacing it with the @API decorator, then set the public property by an external component. So for example, if the C to do item child component has the following, that is import child element, API from LWC, it's export a class. Okay, and set the default and set the value from the parent with the following name. Public properties are a great solution for passing down the primitive values, simple object and arrays. How do we communicate between child to parent in LWC? We can using custom event, we can make the communication from child to a parent. We can create an event and dispatch the from custom event. Create and dispatch an event. So create an event, we can use the custom event constructor to create an event. In constructor, we need to pass custom event name and detail of the event, that dot new custom event page dot comma points, and we have to dispatch it, that event dot target dot dispatch target method. Okay, this dot dispatch event new custom event and event number comma prop. Handle an event, there are two ways to handle an event, that is declare via HTML markup and JavaScript using add event listener method. Here's the picture concept, fire and dispatch event. How can you fire dispatch your event in the parent child to parent? Let's take one example for the declarative via HTML markup. Here create a child component where from which we raise an event. Here the child component comes up. After that we the JS child component for JS to raise a custom event with the text value, and yeah, create one parent component where we will handle the event, that is no uppercase, no spaces, no underscore separate words, and create a parent component.html, and we will call the parent component.js. After that, see, JavaScript using add event listener method, attaching event programmatically. Step 1, we can use the same argument in the parent component, and you can call, sorry, you can call this template dot add event listener my component event dot Command this dot handle custom event dot point. Set the bubbles to while raising the event like below. You can see this. What is event propagation? When an event is fired, the event is propagated up to the DOM. Event propagation typically involves two phases, that is event bubbling and event capturing. The most commonly used event propagation phase for handling events in event bubbling. So in this case, the event is triggered at the child level and propagate up to the DOM. Where an event capture phases move from top to bottom of the DOM, this phase is rarely used for event bubbling. Sorry, event handling. Okay. Here capture bubble and capture component B subcomponent over there. Publish subscriber model in Lightning Web Component. So application event in Aura becomes a publish subscriber pattern in Lightning Web Component. We use an library called PopShop to achieve the communication between components which doesn't have a direct relationship to each other, that is which is not in the hierarchy. This works like a typical publish subscribe model, where an event is subscribed by a component and handled when another component which fires publish the event within the same scope. Option models support three methods, that is registered, unregistered and fire. Here the example that my component.js fire an event. Okay. What is custom event in LOC? Custom event is to make the communication from child to parent. With LOC we can create and dispatch the custom event. Parent to child data fetch query in Salesforce. In Salesforce, if we want to fetch the data from parent to child, you typically use a relationship queries that query under subquery. Like you can use SOQL subject object Salesforce object query language query to retrieve field from both the parent and child objects in a single query. For example, if you have a custom object named child object with a lookup relationship to parent object, you can fetch the data like this: select ID, comma name, comma parent object r dot name, parent object or the custom field from child object where your conditions. What is LDS? If we have a Lightning application that creates records, that creates, reads, update or deletes a record, basically CRUD operation in the Salesforce database, Lightning Data Service is the best and most efficient way to do this. By using LDS, we do not write Apex controller code, or fetch or create the data in Salesforce. The code is already implicitly written in LDS and we only need to call it to use one of the several tools based on your requirements. Coming to next. When a record is loaded for the first time in a component, Lightning Data Service maintains the data in the client-side cache. The data in the cache has a specific lifetime defined. If any request is made to the client to the data within that lifetime, then the data is served from cache, else it resets the cache data lifetime. Okay, there are three Lightning components based on the Lightning Data Service, that is Lightning record form, Lightning record edit form, and regular record reform. Okay, a Lightning record form, a form with standard Lightning UI to create, view, or edit a record. Lightning record edit form, a form to create a record with a specific field or update field in an existing record. And Lightning record view form, a form to display specific field data of a record in read-only mode. Here is the example that Lightning record from demo.html, Lightning record from demo.js, and the record form will be look like this. In the meta.xml file, the x export is equal to true, Lightning that is target, Lightning app page, Lightning record page, and these all will be visible in your Salesforce when you add this in your page level, in your dynamic page. Lightning record edit form demo.html, it's a HTML part, it's a JS part, Lightning record form edit form.js part, and here it's a panel you can edit this. Lightning record form view.html, here .js, Lightning record view form. Here are the some examples of it, and record view form. Only the record will be your view in Salesforce. You cannot edit it. Only the record. It's a read only. What are decorators in LWC? A decorator is a design pattern that allows adding behavior to JavaScript objects. Decorators, which are part of SMS script, are used to dynamically alter or modify the functionality. Types of decorators in LWC. There are two types of decorators in LWC, that is at the API, track, and wire. At the rate API. To expose a public property or a public method, decorate with at the rate API. That is, in the parent to child relationship, we use at the rate API to expose a public property or a public method. That is, parent get called by child. Okay. Public properties are reactive, also known as public reactive properties, since if a value of a property changes, then component is re-rendered. Public properties define API of a component, whereas public methods are a part of component API. A component is re-rendered when the value of a referenced public property is modified or changed. To pass the data from parent to child component at the rate API decorator in the child component exposes a property by making it public so that the parent component can update it. Here the example that you are using at the rate API decorator sample child component.html. Here the meta.xml file. It's a child component and it's a parent component at API decorator sample.parent component.html. What are the message from the parent component? At the rate track. To expose a private property or a private method, declare with at the rate track, also known as private directive properties. And to track a private property and to re-render component when a property changes, use it at the rate track decorator. Available only for the component where it is declared. Field which are using at the rate track decorator that contains an object or an array tells the framework to observe changes to the properties of an object or elements of an array. Here hello world.html and hello world.js can use track at the rate wire. Reactive wire service is utilized in Lightning Web Component to read the Salesforce data from Apex class into Lightning Web Components. Component is re-rendered when wire service provision data from Apex class. The output from Apex method is said to be a property. Here the syntax comes up, that is method name, Apex method, Apex class name, display content.html. Here the example is how to display contents in Salesforce, that is standard contact. You can refer this. What are SQL query timeout and governor limits? SQL query timeouts and governor limits are mechanisms that Salesforce uses to prevent excessive resources consumption and ensure fair sharing of resources among all users and applications. That SQL query timeout occurs when a query takes too long to execute and a Salesforce terminates it. A governor limit is a predefined threshold that limits the number of SQL queries records on other operations that can be performed in a single transaction. Request shortest. If you exceed your governor limit, you will be getting an error and your code will stop your running. Why do SQL query? Why do SQL query timeout and governor limits matter? So SQL query timeouts and governor limits matter because they can affect your application performance, reliability on user experience. If your SQL queries are too complex, inefficient and or unoptimized. So they can basically they can cause a query time of limits that result in incomplete or inaccurate your data retrieval. So if your SO queries are too frequent and redundant or unnecessary, that can cause governor limit errors to prevent your code from your executing or completing, then these issues can lead to a poor satisfaction, lost your productivity, and it increase your maintenance cost. So how do you avoid your SQL query timeout in Salesforce? So using offset, using where clause, using limit, we can avoid your using group by, use where condition to avoid your SQL timeout limit in Salesforce. Okay, so to optimize your SQL query performance in Salesforce, we need to write queries that are fast and efficient, utilize filters and conditions to limit the number of records returned, such as where conditions, where clause to specify criteria, limit clause to specify maximum number of records, or offset clause to skip your records. Like leverages index, which are data indexed like ID, name, and owner ID. Okay, and here the aggregate functions and group by clauses can also be used to perform a calculation and summarize your data. So how do you avoid SQL queries governor limits in Salesforce? To avoid SQL governor limits in Salesforce, you need to write SQL queries that are smart and scalable. So bulkification and collections can be used to group multiple records or operations into a single, handle your multiple records or operations into a single transactions or request, while triggers and batches can be used to handle asynchronous and recurring tasks. Cache and static variables can reduce the number of SQL queries, while other featured methods and queuable effects can be used to execute logic in a separate thread. So these are all general guidelines and techniques that can help you to achieve this goal. How do you monitor and optimize your SQL queries in Salesforce? To monitor and optimize your SQL queries in Salesforce, there are several tools and resources available. That is, Developer Console is a web-based interface that allows writing, executing, debugging, and testing your code and queries. It also enables to view query plans, checks query execution time, analyze query result, and debug query errors. The Apex Debugger is a tool for debugging code and queries in real time with ability to set breakup points, inspect variables, watch expressions, and set up through code and queries line by line. So the Apex Profiler measures the performance of code and queries by collecting your data such as CPU time and SQL queries, TML operations, heap size, governor limits for each execution unit. Okay, the execution overview panel provides the execution detail of code and queries with the order, duration, outcome, and log levels of each execution. How to call one batch class from another batch class? There are two ways in Salesforce which are used to call batch class from another batch class, that is using QL Apex or using the finish method in the batch class. In this way, you can create a chaining between the batches. Note, if you call the batch class from the start or execute method, then Salesforce will throw an error that system.acing exception set database.execute batch cannot be called from a batch start, batch execute, or feature method. Here, if you call while calling batch from the start method, there is an error that is, you can see this string query, and in the global database.current start batch database.batchable, and you can, in the start method, you call the another batch over there, that is batch class to queuable, this new batch class to queuable database that execute batch. So it will be shown that database that execute batch cannot be called if we throw an error like this, be called from a batch start, batch execute, or future method. Same error while calling from the execute method. Same error while calling from the in the start method we can call the another batch. In the execute method also we can call the another batch like this batch through QL. Okay. Here the complete definition of an error message, that is async itna. There are two solutions for this error using QL apex, or let's see one by one. Using QL apex. So in the QL apex, that is batch through QL batch new batch itna. For the new batch through QL, database.execute batch comma b comma 200. After that, yeah, in the QL, got it. In the batch class, you can call the QL class, that is this is you can do a batch class to QL like this batch class to QL, and you can collect this using the finish method of a batch class like this. You can call another batch in the finish method. Here the code, that is global class batch account update as subject database to allow caller to string query database to query locator, collect the batches of records if we are asked to execute, return database to query in the execute batch for account batch of records, and global verb finish we are calling batch from finish method of the second batch, that is update account contact p, that is new batch account update related contact database dot execute batch 200. Calling from schedule class, that is global class schedule batch account update, implement schedulable global word execute schedulable context sc, that is calling another batch from your schedule class. Here the second batch is when you call the first batch in the second batch, that is global class batch update account related contacts, that is called string your query. After that, in the execute method you can call the database.batchable list of contact. After that, process your each batch of record, and it will go execute any post processing operations in the finish method. Here the third batch global class, third batch goes to QL, implement database.batchable and database.allowColor. These are the examples which I have explained earlier. So another example that is in the here in the below example, there are two batches like batch 1 and batch 2. I want to execute batch 2 after the finish of batch 1. So I'm calling batch 2 in the class, batch 2 class in batch 1 in the finish method. So here the example, you can refer this, you can read this one by line. Here the database start also a new batch. Here we will call the another batch. Here the batch 2, we're calling another batch. For the it is batch 2. What number of callouts would be able to bring in batch apex? As far as possible, currently 100 callout, which implies on the off chain, that is you have one callout in your execute strategy, you can keep the batch size as 100. Suppose we have two callouts, then our batch size can be 50 in size. Let us know batch is synchronous or asynchronous. So a batch is asynchronous. So what let us know that what is asynchronous. So asynchronous cause that thread won't wait until it's finished its job prior to continue to next. Rather than it continues to next leave, it's anything but it is different thread. In an asynchronous call, the code runs in the numerous threads which assists with doing numerous tasks as background occupation, that is batch at the future notation. And in synchronous call, the thread will wait until its complete its tasks before proceeding the next. Okay, that is in a synchronous, that trigger controller extension custom controller are the example of synchronous, and it is in asynchronous at the rate future, batch apex, qbel. These are asynchronous. Here is an example for callout in batch apex. You can refer this how to make callout in batch apex. Sorry. Yeah. How can we call another batch from batch apex? Here batch number 1, and it is called batch number 2 in the batch number 1. Here this. You can refer this. Maximum size of the batch and minimum size of the batch. That is, maximum size of the batch apex is 1 and minimum size, sorry, the minimum size for a batch apex is 1 and the maximum size for a batch apex is 2000 and the default batch size is 200. How can we track the details of current running batch using batchable context? So integer jobs, select count from acing apex job where job type is batch apex and status in pre-processing, preparing and queued if job 6 greater than 3, then throws too many batch apex job exception. We can try it over this. Mixed TML error. So mixed TML comes up when you try to perform operations on a setup or non-setup objects in a single transaction. So the mixed TML error will come. So TML operation on certain as objects, sometimes referred to as setup objects, can't be mixed with TML on other as object in the same transaction. The restriction exists because some S object affects the user record access in the org. You must insert update these type of S object in a different transaction to prevent operation from happening with incorrect access level permissions. You can't update an account and a user role in a single transaction. Here you can't in the mixed TML example, you can't update an account and a user role for a single transaction. What is setter object? Setter objects are the S objects that affect the user access to records in the organization. That object permissions, setup objects like object permissions, permission type, permission set assignment, queues of subject, territory, user role, and user. And how to fix mixed TML? Use feature method to avoid mixed TML errors, mixed TML operations in test TML. That is mixed TML operations system. How can you avoid in test class? That system.run as blocks and use @feature to bypass the mixed TML error in the test method. Avoiding mixed TML error using @feature method. We can use feature method to avoid mixed TML error in Salesforce. Let's see when mixed TML issues come in Salesforce. In the below code, we are trying to insert a record and a user role together. Then mixed TML will come place. Here, public class mixed TML error demo. Then it will be public static void my method, define a method content, that is Trailhead titans, profile and user, and then a user insert any user. When you will be execute the above query, you will get an error like this, that system.tml exception insertion failed. First exception on row 0, first error mixed TML operation daemon operations on setup object is not permitted after you have updated a non-setup object or the insertion. So let's see how to perform mixed TML operation by using a feature method to perform operation object. We can simply move to the setup object transaction in the feature context to avoid this. Text like this below. That is public class mixed TML error demo. That is public static void method, and in the account error use util feature demo dot insert user. Yeah. Use feature methods help in avoiding mixed TML errors like below. That is public class util feature demo. That is @feature, and in the profile URL and user creation of titles, that is new user allows that teletitans @gmail.com, encoding all the set the values while creating a user. After that, insert user. Then it will not throw an error. How to resolve mixed TML exception in test drive? We can use system.run as blocks in Salesforce to avoid mixed TML operations errors. That is @isTest private class mixed TML test static data system.run as this user. It's a profile and user name, as you can see in example below. So use @feature to bypass the mixed TML error in a test method. Troubleshoot errors in Salesforce Apex exception email. Troubleshoot error in Salesforce Apex and handling exception is a crucial way to ensure that the stability and reliability of your applications. If you are not receiving any exception emails or facing emails with here are some steps you can troubleshoot the error. Check email availability settings, verify email settings in Apex code, and check limit and restrictions. After that, check review exception handling, check email logs, test your emails, test email sending. After that, check email spam folder, verify email address, and monitor Salesforce health. Lightning Web Components. That is architecture of Lightning Web Components similar to Aura component. The main content of a LWC are also HTML, JavaScript. There are no optional content like CSS, but then in addition to these for LWC and XML configuration that it's included while creating a LWC, there are three files will be created, that is .html, .js, and meta.xml file. What are Lightning Web Components and how are they are different from Aura components? So Lightning Web Components are the latest Salesforce UI framework based on modern web standards such as web components. Unlike Aura components, LWC uses a more efficient and Lightning Web architecture, providing better performance and ease of development. Here LWC comes up. Here the simple example of Hello World in LWC. Aura enabled and unenabled cacheable is equal to 2. What is the difference between @aura enabled and aura enabled cacheable is equal to true? That is, aura enabled, this annotation is used to make a method available for invocation by Lightning Web Component, and it doesn't imply any specific caching behavior. The data returned by the method won't be cached by default. Or that aura enabled cacheable is equal to true. This variation of the annotation is used when you want to enable caching for this method. Okay, when cacheable is set to equal to true, it indicates that the result of a method can be cached on the client side. This is useful when the data retrieved by the method doesn't change frequently, and caching can improve performance by reducing the need to make the repeated service calls for the same data. Lightning Design Service. Lightning Data Service. Lightning Data Service is a centralized data for caching mechanism that is used to create, read, update, and delete a record without the server-side Apex code. It supports the sharing rules and field level security as well, which means the user will never have access to the unauthorized data, or it will never able to update the field which it doesn't have access. So Lightning Data Service returns the data and metadata in the same request. Okay, whenever we have to work with Salesforce data and metadata for Salesforce record, we use our Lightning Data Service. Okay, when we use our Lightning Data Service, whenever we have to work with Salesforce data and metadata, then we can go for Lightning Data Service. So Lightning Data Service is built on the top of user interface API. So whenever the client has to be display for some data on a browser, it sends the request, and the request will go to the user interface API. Then to Salesforce data, similarly the response sent back to the user interface, then the client, once data received, it displayed on the browser. What are the actions performed by the Lightning Data Service behind the scene? It loads the record data progressively and improves the performance of your own Lightning Web Components, and it caches the result on the client side and also improve the performance by your reducing network calls, and it invalidates cache whenever any change happen to the same record or metadata. Always keep the updating copy of record in the cache. Advantages of LDS: no Apex side controller required. Cache technique improves the performance. Here we do not write the Apex code in the Lightning Data Service. LDS based component, that is Lightning Record Waveform, Lightning Record Edit Form, and Lightning Record Form. What is SLDS? SLDS is Salesforce Lightning Design System. Help you to build application which with the look and feel of Lightning experience without writing a single line of CSS. That is, SLDS is a CSS framework that gives you access to the icons, color, and platelets and font that our developers use to create Lightning experience. Lightning experience UI core principles that is clarity, efficiency, consistency, beauty, benefits of LZDS. So here are some benefits of LZDS that it provides unified experience and streamlined workflow which extending existing features or integrating with external systems. It doesn't over enforce defaults such as padding or margin. It continuously updated your tasks and it continuously accessible to your CSS framework. Okay, and it works with other CSS framework also like Bootstrap. What are the types of decorators in LWC like Lightning Web Components and explain all the decorators in Lightning Web Components. There are three types of decorators that is at the rate API, at the rate track and at the rate wire. So to at the rate API to expose a public property decorate with at the rate API an owner component that uses the component in its markup and can access your component properties, public properties. Okay, and at the rate track to track the private property and re-render component when the value change when it changes and decorate with the property at the rate track and at the rate wire to read the Salesforce data. What are public properties in Lightning Web Components? Public properties are reactive. If the value of a public property changes, the component re-renders to expose a public property decorate with at the rate API. LMS Lightning Message Service is defined as a standard PubSub library that enables communication with DOM across a component by its Visual Force page or a component and Lightning Web Components. All can use it publish message and send to message published by others. Aura components. How many events do we have in Aura components and what is their purpose? So there are three types of event that is component event, application events and standard out of the box events. The standard components that is this is used when the data has to be sent from child to parent. This is an application is used when the data has to be sent from one component to another component that is not within the hierarchy. And standard of the box component, these are some events that are provided by to us by the framework that we can make use of without creating them. So in the LWC that Lightning Web Component we use that is which we can communicate that is within with not in the hierarchy that is we can use a option model or LMS. Otherwise in the Aura components we can use application events which is not in the hierarchy. The major difference between Aura component and Lightning Web components. Explain how data can be sent from parent to child components using attributes. We can send from parent to child component in Aura components. But the type of attributes like a variable store different types of values. Like these are the basic types of attributes: string, boolean, decimal, integer, double, date, date enter, and long. Collection types that is list, array, map, set. Here are the collection types. Object types like on object which can pass the data. Attributes are always declared with or a namespace. This. How data can be sent from child to parent in Aura components. When data has to be sent from child to parent, we need to make user component events and set the data. Which interface used to display components on Lightning pages? That is force out app hostable, forced out community available for all type of pages, flexible page available for all type of page, flexible for record page. Here the description creates a component available for drag and drop in the community builder. Create a component that for use in Lightning pages or Lightning app builder. Create a component for use on the record page, homepage in Lightning experience. How Apex method called in Aura? Create an Apex method. First, let's create an Apex method named get holidays to fetch the holiday records from the leave calendar object. That is here the Apex class, and call the Apex method in the JS controller. Next will be get the holidays. So here you can refer to init function that is called the method. You can see, yeah. Okay, async versus sync Apex. Synchronous are like two-way conversation. You ask a question, you get an answer. Like then in synchronous processing, the code runs in a single thread in the same sequence is written, and the user waits for the request to complete before they can continue with their work. It's immediate, but it also cause the user to have to wait. If the process is long or complex, then user have to wait for this. After the completion, it goes for the next task. But here the example, like trigger controller action, a custom controller acing triggered thread will not wait for the task. It execute parallelly. Like examples, feature method qbl by batch apex. Asynchronous call, the thread will not wait until it's completed tasks before proceeding to next. In a synchronous call, tasks are run in the different threads altogether. Trigger context where our trigger or trigger define implicit variable that allow developer to access runtime constraint. These variables are contained in the system.trigger class. That is, here are the return type of trigger, that trigger dot is before, is after, trigger dot is insert, is update, is delete, is undelete, trigger dot size, trigger dot is executing, trigger new, trigger dot old, trigger dot new map, trigger dot old one, trigger dot operation in update. Here the event before and after, that is insert, update, delete, and undelete. What are the operations? We are the trigger dot new, and trigger dot new map in the after. You can set like this. Here the definition between trigger dot new, trigger dot old map, and trigger dot new map. Trigger dot operation type. Consideration. What are the consideration while using the trigger context variable? That trigger dot new, trigger dot old cannot be used in Apex HTML operations. You can use an object to change its own find values using trigger.u, but only before triggers. In all after trigger.u is not saved, so a runtime exception is thrown. Trigger.old is always a read only. You cannot delete a trigger.new. Trigger events, that is two type of events, that is before event and after event. Before had someone that insert, update, and delete, and after is insert, update, delete, and undelete. Batch versus future versus scheduler versus queuable. What is batch apex? Batch apex is used to process large sets of data asynchronously in smaller batches to avoid governor limits. And when would you use batch apex instead of other apex method? Suppose you have a large sets of data over 50,000 records, then we need to bypass the synchronous execution time limits. Then Qable Apex is used to perform asynchronous processing of complex or long-running operation by adding them to the Apex job queue. And what are the advantages of Qable Apex over Batch Apex? That is, Qable Apex has a more flexible execution flow and doesn't have limitation on the number of records and can be changed for complex processes. Can you call a Qable Apex from a Batch Apex? Yes, you can call a Qable Apex from a Batch Apex. Used to perform additional processing after a batch of completes. What is schedule Apex? You can schedule your Apex class at a particular specific time or intervals. How do you schedule your Apex schedule? You can schedule an Apex schedule by using the system.schedule method or by using the Salesforce user interface. What is a feature method in Salesforce? A feature method is used to run long running operations asynchronously in a separate thread, allowing other code to continue executing. What are the limitations of feature method? That feature method limitations such as not able to call them from triggers, limited callouts, and not being able to perform DML operation on a nonsense set of offset. Can you call a feature method from a visual force? Yes, you can call a feature method from a visual force page, but you need to ensure that this method with annotated at the feature callout is equal to 2. When we use particular async process, this asynchronous Apex features is used to process multiple records for the job together that require a larger query result. Batch Apex is asynchronous job. Batch Apex allows a single job that can be broken into smaller parts where every record can be processed separately. Feature methods run their own time and do not start until they are available. Runs large jobs that will execute normal processing limits and secure similar to feature method, but provide additional job chaining and allow more complex data can be used. Schedule Apex class at a specified time. What is view state? Any data that is displayed on visual force page, first it will code for the view state, and then it will show on visual force page. That is data limit is 170 KB. Above 170, it will throw an error. By using pagination, we can avoid view state error. Otherwise, in pagination, using R with SOQL, that limit and offset drawback ensure every time SQL query has to be run and it will accept only 2000 offset. What are the different types of Salesforce flow? Screen flow, auto load flow, trigger flow, record trigger flow, schedule trigger, and platform event trigger flow. Can a scheduled trigger flow make call out? Yes, a scheduled trigger flow can make a call out after executing a pause element. For example, without a pause element, the flow can't access external object. Execute Apex action that makes a call out or execute action that are generated from external services and registrations. What are the order of execution when an object has both apex triggers and record trigger? Before before save record trigger flow runs. After that, before save apex triggers. After save apex trigger and after save record trigger flow. These are the order of the executions in Salesforce flow and trigger. How how how? Sorry. Yeah. How order will be run? What is an element in Salesforce flow? Data elements create, update, get, delete. In flow builder, there are three groups of elements at interaction, logic, data. Interaction, logic, and data. The data elements reach out from the flow instance and interact with Salesforce data, allowing the flow to retrieve information flown from or make changes to record in the database. What is fault connector in flow? A fault connector is a type of connector used in Salesforce flow that allows you to handle errors and exceptions that may occur during the flow execution. How to debug a flow? Using debug button, you can debug your flow. Authentication, that is SSO, is an authentication method that enables user to access multiple applications with one login and one set of credentials. For example, after user log in your org, they can automatically access all apps from the app launcher. Social sign-on in Salesforce. Social sign-on, also known as social authentication or social login, is a user authentication mechanism that allows individuals to access the website. Okay, in application or service by using their existing social media or identity provider credential instead of creating a new account specific username or password. A connected app is a framework that enables an external application to integrate with Salesforce using API and standard protocols such as SAML, Auth, OpenID Connect. Connected app are use these protocols to authenticate, authorize, and provide single sign-on for external app. Some more concepts, that is SOAP API and REST API. SOAP API relies on SOAP protocol and REST API relies on HTTP. Transport data into XML format, into XML and JSON format in the REST API. And it's highly structured, it's a less structured, less bulky data, and designed with large enterprise in the SOAP API, and it is in the REST API designed with mobile devices in mind. Introduction to Bulk API 2.0 and Bulk API. So Salesforce Bulk API are based on REST principles and are optimized for working with large sets of data. Use them to insert, update, upsert, or delete many records asynchronously. You can submit a request and come back for the result later. Salesforce processes the request in the background. Any data operations includes more than 2000 records. It's a good candidate for bulk API 2.0 to successfully prepare, execute, and manage an asynchronous workflow that uses the bulk framework. Okay. Using Bulk API 2.0, Bulk API requires basic familiarity with software development, web services, and the Salesforce user interface because both Bulk API are asynchronous. Salesforce doesn't guarantee a service level agreement. What is the difference between Bulk API 2.0 and Bulk API? Although Bulk API 2.0 predecessor Bulk API is available, use Bulk API 2.0 instead of Bulk API if you want to more streamlined workflow. And Bulk API, if you want to more streamlined workflow, Bulk API provides a simple interface to load large amount of data in your Salesforce or and to perform bulk queries on your organization or data. It design is more consistent and better integrated with Salesforce, other Salesforce API. Synchronous and asynchronous command limits are synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous operations occur in real time and are initiated by user interaction such as clicking a button, submitting a form. That is a particular Visual Force page and workflow rules and validation shown during record save. Examples of asynchronous batch future cubal scheduler. These are the examples of asynchronous operations. Lifecycle hooks in LWC, that is constructor, connected callback, rendered callback, disconnected callback, and the error callback. These are the life cycles of your LWC. Lifecycle hook in LWC. How many ways we can call an Apex? There are two servers using wire services and imperative method. Here the example, you can display it. Call Apex imperatively. How you call an Apex class imperatively? Here the example comes up. You can refer this. Difference between wire and imperative call. As a wire is reactive and it returns every time the data sources get changed, and it reduces the server call, which helps to speed up the performance. While imperative, we can control the apex call, we can perform developer operations. Access tokens are your key to Salesforce API with a client successfully complete your authorization flow. Whether it's a standard or 2.0 flow or a headless identity flow. Salesforce issues an access token that can be used to access protected Salesforce data. Salesforce supports two types of access tokens: opaque tokens and JSON web token. Here are the code scenarios. Whenever account insert with rating as hot, that description has to be updated according to hot. Here the account scenario, list of accounts for loop, and you can add this. Whenever phone gets updated in account, same phone number has to be updated in all the contacts. You can do like this. If the account has more than one contact, the account cannot be deleted. Third scenario is this: prevent account deletion on account. Yes. Okay. So that's all about me. It's 1 second. Yeah. Thank you so much. Please hit like and subscribe my channel. Thank you guys.